It's happening again, more backstage drama in All Elite Wrestling. After going back and forth on social media this week, Andrade and Sammy Guevara have a backstage confrontation that leads to punches being thrown and Andrade being sent home from Dynamite this week with his Rampage match being cancelled. We've got all of the details on that. Plus, speaking of brawls, we have an update on the All Out investigation involving CM Punk, the Young Bucks, Kenny Omega, and Ace Steel. Saraya gets physical for the first time in years last night on Dynamite. MJF and Jay Lethal, possibly a day turning babyface, plus an update on Battle of the Bouts. Hey guys, welcome back to Wrestling News 365. Hope everyone is doing very well. As always, unfortunately nowadays there are plenty of news stories to get into in the world of All Elite Wrestling, and the backstage drama continues. We've covered this the last few days, the back and forth between Andrade and Sammy Guevara, and it's boiled up into a backstage brawl once again, or a backstage altercation, the second backstage altercation that Sammy Guevara has been involved in the last couple of months, and it's resulted in Andrade being sent home from the Dynamite tapings last night. His match that was scheduled against Preston Vance on Rampage live this week has indeed been cancelled. Guevara did wrestle last night. We've got all of the details, so let's get into all of this and then I'll give my opinion on it. So, heading into last night, there was this point of contention. What was going to happen? What was going to happen between Andrade and Sammy Guevara? And an update was actually posted before any of this even happened. Sean Ross Sapp, via Fightful Select, of course, their Patreon service, be sure to check that out, posted an update as to how people were feeling backstage in AEW about their back and forth on social media. As a fan, you watched it and read it online and said, this is incredibly embarrassing. It's the last thing AEW need right now after all of this backstage drama and BS going on between CM Punk and Hangman Page, the Young Bucks and CM Punk, Kenny Omega involved in there, several key players now being suspended, investigations, all that kind of stuff. The last thing that AEW need is another backstage drama, is another backstage altercation. Of course, Sammy Guevara was involved in one with Eddie Kingston as well. So Guevara and Andrade were just the latest players involved in AEW backstage drama. The two had taken shots at one another on social media and in interviews, of course. It was previously stated by Andrade in an interview that Guevara had claimed he hit too hard, and then there was a back and forth talking about how you confronted me, no you didn't confront me, you're a liar, you just want to go back to WWE, you're a pity hire, you haven't got over twice, you were only hired because your father-in-law, you want to go back to WWE. It was messy and it was embarrassing. Now, prior to Dynamite last night, Fightful spoke with several staff and talent about the situation, and they claimed at the time they hadn't heard about it being fabricated or worked, which of course now we know it wasn't worked, it wasn't fabricated. It was said, quote, when you get into mentioning that wrestling isn't real, it defeats the purpose of whatever storyline you could be trying to work, said one veteran when we asked if the tweets and comments were real or worked. They were talking about hitting each other hard and complaining, so if it's a work, it's a bad one. I'm sure they'll eventually have a match, though, just because people are talking. Well, they had a match, and it was backstage. Now, another top talent in AEW was frustrated by the way things played out, regardless of if it was a work or a shoot, because they felt it painted a poor picture of AEW's locker room. Just wait. If you thought that was a poor picture. Now, Fightful had heard that the locker room has been much more cohesive since the AEW All-Out situation that left numerous top stars suspended. A turning point that several AEW talent pointed to was Chris Jericho, Bryan Danielson, and Jon Moxley's talent meeting that calmed many nerves and was said to have helped get a lot of people on the right track. Now, another AEW original has said that they viewed the Andrade and Sammy Guevara situation as disrespectful to the work that these three put on in making that happen, regardless of the context or what follows, specifically whether it was planned or spontaneous or worked. One of the points hammered home in recent weeks has been to keep the dirty laundry private in that regard, which of course they didn't. There were a couple of others that Fightful had heard from who were steadfast that, in the quote, if it doesn't involve me, I'm not going to pay attention to it or concern myself with it camp, and also pointed to the more cohesive locker room as of late. Well, that was before the fight or the backstage altercation happened, because it's happening again. Another backstage altercation took place in All Elite Wrestling. It was reported via Sean Ross Sapp, once again a Fightful Select. TMZ Sports also has exclusive details. We'll talk about that in a second. But sources familiar with the situation claimed that last night, October 5th, the AEW Dynamite show, there was a, quote, altercation between Andrade and Sammy Guevara. Of course, the two had taken shots at each other in interviews and on social media throughout the week, and it came to a head at the Dynamite tapings. Andrade was removed from a scheduled Mask vs. Korea match against the Dark Order's 10, with the latter remaining on the Rampage schedule in another match. He's going to be competing for the AEW World Trios Championships with the Dark Order. Now, those that Fightful spoke to say there was a verbal altercation that got physical, with Sammy Guevara shoving Andrade and Andrade throwing a punch. Though the order of operations and the specifics are certainly foggy, TMZ have provided an update on this. We'll talk about that in a second. Now, the Fightful, Sean Ross Sapp is reporting that he wasn't sure if the punch actually connected, but Fightful were told it was not part of a grander work. At least one and possibly both wrestlers were thought at the time to be removed from the tapings and sent home. That wasn't the case. Sammy Guevara wrestled in the main event. We'll touch on that in a second. Now, Andrade posted shortly afterwards on social media, quote, "Respect me and I'll respect you," on social media on his Twitter account. As I mentioned previously, it was noted that several in AEW were frustrated by the situation in light of the locker room being more cohesive in recent weeks. Now, TMZ, as I mentioned, they've also posted an update on this too, and confirming that this backstage altercation did happen, according to sources telling TMZ Sports, and Andrade was indeed sent home. Now, this is what TMZ are saying. They're saying that sources have told them that words were exchanged and things turned physical. Sammy allegedly pushed Andrade and punches were thrown, according to their sources. It's unclear if anyone was hit. The sources are adamant the altercation was not part of a storyline or anything like that. And the sources have also said that several wrestlers are pissed at Sammy for publicly airing personal / private issues, and things boiled over in the arena. So again, it's unsure. If you've heard this story before, it's very similar to the All Out or the Brawl Out situation. It's unsure who threw the first punch, but what all of the sources and all of the reports are saying, that Sammy Guevara did indeed push Andrade. It's then unknown if Guevara threw the first punch or Andrade then threw a punch. Nevertheless, it would appear that Guevara, sort of in terms of the physicality, instigated the situation. But when it comes to Andrade, as I mentioned, Andrade was sent home. His planned Mask vs. Korea match with Preston Vance of the Dark Order was scrapped, instead being replaced by Death Triangle versus the Dark Order in an AEW World Trios Championship match. But when it comes to Sammy Guevara, he wrestled like nothing happened. He was on a backstage vignette before the show, or during the show rather, and in addition to that, he wrestled in the main event of the show. And when we covered the tweets that were going back and forth, I said that first of all, it was embarrassing. And after everything that AEW has gone through in recent weeks, after what is the perception currently of the AEW locker room, I said that it was embarrassing. As a fan, just as someone that's scrolling through social media, I looked at this and went, these high school, primary school BS, going back, you lied, no, you lied, you didn't say it to my face, no, you did say it to my face, airing your dirty laundry out in public. That's what it was. It was embarrassing, is what it was. And I said at the time that this shouldn't escalate. This shouldn't escalate. Everyone could see there clearly was an issue here. Whether you thought it was a work or it was a shoot or whatever, everyone could see there was an issue. Clearly there was an issue. Where is talent relations? Where is talent relations? Where is Tony Khan? What are they doing? Did nobody in this alleged talent relations department pick up the phone at any point to Andrade, to Sammy Guevara, to both, and say, if you bring this with you to TV, you'll be suspended or you'll be fired? Did anyone try and make contact? And even so, why were these two people kept anywhere near each other in the arena? Keep them separate, or have words beforehand and say, look, if you can't remain professional, if you're going to confront each other backstage, we'll send you both home, we'll fine you, we'll suspend you. That didn't happen. Where is Tony Khan? Where is the talent relations side? What are they doing at this point? Because you're not learning at this point. You're making the same mistakes over and over and over again. You're doing nothing different. Look at the situation at All Out. Look at what happened with CM Punk, with the Young Bucks, with Kenny Omega, with Ace Steel, with Hangman Page, with Colt Cabana. That was a situation that started off quite small, based on rumors, based on people saying things in promos, based on people allegedly leaking stuff to the press, and it got more and more and more out of control because you didn't handle it. You didn't step in, you didn't do your job. You didn't speak to all of the talent involved and say, that's not true, or get these guys in a room, let's resolve this. If you can't resolve this, you're going to be sent home. And what happened? It blew up, it boiled over, it got into physicality. On the grandest stage possible, in front of the media, which is still embarrassed about, which is still investigating right now. That led to a brawl. And just weeks later, the same thing happened. Everyone could see that. I said it on a video, and I'm not Nostradamus. I'm not sitting here like I'm a genius, and I don't work in talent relations. That's their job. As the president and CEO of the company, that's your job. Speak to talent relations, or if you're a talent relations head, Christopher Daniels, Pat Buck, whoever's involved in that, Tony Schiavone. How does this happen? How does this happen? It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous how that can happen. Who is not doing their job properly? A lot of people. Now, I'm not saying that the wrestlers are off the hook by any stretch of the imagination. Andrade in the interview, should he have said what he said? No, clearly not. Sammy Guevara going on social media and calling Andrade these names, saying, oh, you only got hired because you're Ric Flair's son-in-law and you want to go back to WWE and this, that, and the other. All of these guys, get off social media. Go to the people above you, go to Tony Khan, go to talent relations, say, this is an issue I'm having, figure it out. But if the perception is at the moment that the inmates are running the asylum, well, perception is reality at this point. You can see it. The fact that there have been three, count them, 1, 2, 3, public altercations in the last, couple of months is ridiculous. Ridiculous. And 2 of them involve the same person. If you're Sammy Guevara, again, he can go on his vlog and say, oh, there's so much drama in pro wrestling. But wait a minute, you have to take a step back and go, but it involves me twice. Why does it involve me? What's going on with myself? Why is it always involving me here? Eddie Kingston, now Andrade. Have a look at yourself. And I think that AEW, at this point, I'm willing to look past. I mean, again, I understand arguments happen. I understand it's professional wrestling. I understand fights happen. I understand disagreements happen. They've happened in WWE. They've happened in Impact. They've happened in New Japan. That's the business. Unfortunately, it does happen. You have strong personalities. You have egos. You're an independent contractor, and it's an individualistic business. You don't work as a team or anything like that. I get it. But when you have 3 incidents in the space of a couple of months, something's wrong, and you can't handle it. What does talent relations do apart from book travel and book hotel rooms or tell talent where to be? Because they're not handling inter-talent or interpersonal issues. Clearly they're not. Because this is ridiculous. And anyone could have seen this coming a mile off. A mile off, everyone could have seen this coming. And nobody bothered to step in. Nobody. And the fact that, okay, Andrade sent home, fair enough. He was involved in a physical altercation the same way that Eddie Kingston was suspended. Fair enough. The same way that CM Punk, the Young Bucks, and Kenny Omega and Ace Steel were all suspended. And those producers. Fair enough. Why on earth is Sammy Guevara wrestling in the main event of TV? Why is that happening? What message does that send? What message does that send by Tony Khan? What message does that send to anyone else? Because, again, this is the second time Sammy Guevara has been involved in an altercation, and I understand with the Eddie Kingston one, maybe he didn't get physical with him. By all accounts, he was just saying stuff or laughing or whatever. Okay, he didn't get physical. But certainly, clearly, he's a pain in the ass to deal with backstage. And Sammy Guevara is involved in another altercation, another backstage incident, and he's in the main event. What does that say? What does that say to any other talent backstage? Because clearly there are favorites. And again, I go back to Hangman Page. Hangman Page, whilst he wasn't involved in the brawl, whilst he, you can perceive he didn't do anything wrong, he's involved in that whole CM Punk situation. He was involved in that. He's wrestling for the World Championship in a couple of weeks. He wins a Battle Royal. So what message is being sent by Tony Khan? What are talent relations doing? What is he doing? Nothing. And this is embarrassing. And when it happens once or twice, or maybe even when it happens once, it happens. But you nip it in the bud, you send a message to the talent, this is unacceptable. And you could say, well, he did send a message because he stripped people of titles and he suspended them. But what's he learning? He's doing interviews about all of this stuff he's learnt from all of these situations and what he's learned. AEW's been around for 3 years. Clearly, he hasn't learned in the last couple of weeks how to handle this situation. Because It shouldn't have happened. This is completely avoidable. And again, it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing. And to those people that don't like AEW, that I'm not, I'm an AEW fan, I'm a WWE fan. There are things I like, things I don't like. I'm a pro wrestling fan. But those people that don't like AEW, those detractors, this is just easy. It's easy for them. You're doing light work. And even there might be people that have got nothing to do with this situation, nothing to do whatsoever, and they just might think, you know what, I want out of this company because this is ridiculous. It's embarrassing. And what the fallout of it's going to be, I don't know. But ultimately, it's embarrassing. And Tony Khan, again, the buck stops with him. And he's the one who needs to be held responsible for this. Talent relations, I don't know what they do at this point. They don't get back to people, according to reports. They're certainly not resolving issues between talents. What are they doing, apart from booking travel? I don't know. From one brawl to another, the one at All Out, there's a bit of an update regarding this. Tony Khan has given one. There's a slight update on the investigation into the AEW All Out backstage fight. It's now, of course, been over a month since AEW All Out, where CM Punk went on his verbal tirade during the media scrum that led to a backstage fight with the Elite. Punk's friend and AEW producer Ace Steel was also physically involved in the fight. All those involved in the brawl were suspended, with an investigation currently ongoing. Punk, Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks have all been off television since the event. And speaking to Variety, AEW CEO and President Tony Khan was asked about the post-All-Out incident and the status of those involved. Khan ultimately refused to comment, but he did state that the investigation is ongoing. It remains to be seen when the investigation will be over or when fans will see Punk, Omega or the Bucks in AEW again, if ever again, but that's the latest on that. It's ongoing. Speaking of, the press scrums, etc. In a new interview with Sports Illustrated, Tony Khan has confirmed that he will continue to hold the media scrums after the events while declining to comment on the incident that took place over the course of Labor Day weekend. So the press scrums are going to continue. Maybe there might be guidelines to follow, maybe there won't. If the Andrade Sammy Guevara incident's anything to go by, they'll just play like nothing happened and hope that it doesn't happen again. Ridiculous. Last night, there was a show, Dynamite, the 3rd-year anniversary, and going into it, there was a lot of comments. There has been a lot of discussion about the in-ring status of Saraya. Tony Khan confirmed in an interview prior to the show that he was going to address Saraya's AEW in-ring status, of course. He said, quote, "I will at some points for sure address that, and I think we'll find out more about what Saraya is going to do in AEW, but that's not really something I can answer here. But I think keep watching Dynamite, Rampage on Fridays. You're going to find out more about what Saraya is going to be doing in AEW. Well, they addressed it. They addressed it on last night's episode of AEW Dynamite. Britt Baker, prior to the women's match on the show, Britt Baker addressed in a backstage segment that Saraya had not been cleared by AEW doctors to wrestle, which should have been a red flag, it must be said. Prior to this trios match, it was Toni Storm, Willow Nightingale, and Athena facing Jamie Hayter, Penelope Ford, and Serena Deeb. Saraya was in the corner of the baby faces. Britt Baker was in the corner of the heels. But the fact that Britt Baker would say that on TV was a bit of a red flag. Well, she got physical. For the first time in several years, she got physical. After the match, Saraya got in the face of Britt Baker, throwing a slap at the former AEW Women's World Champion before the two of them got into a brawl. This is the first time Saraya has got physical since her retirement in 2018, and since she suffered that injury, the neck injury that ultimately ended her career at the end of 2017. Saraya also took out Rebel with a super kick, seemingly confirming that she is cleared to at least take bumps on the show. So, to all of those people that were saying, Saraya, she's not medically cleared, she's not going to wrestle, you could tell. You could tell by the way she was presented when she made her debut on the Grand Slam edition of Dynamite. You could tell by all accounts the amount of money she's being paid to, that it was highly likely that she was going to be wrestling, and I think last night's more confirmation of that. Whilst they haven't explicitly said that she is going to be wrestling, I would think it's building to Saraya versus Britt Baker, possibly at Full Gear. That seems the most likely time for that match to happen. So Saraya indeed seemingly is cleared. And the moment they said on television with Britt Baker, the heel, in a promo, she's not cleared, well, the heels lie and heels are wrong. So clearly it would appear that she is cleared to wrestle. MJF opened the show last night against Wheeler Yuta. Fantastic match. Really, really good match. Really enjoyed it. It was MJF's first match in 130 odd days or something like that. It was fantastic. Now, after the match, after MJF had defeated Wheeler Yuta. Wheeler Yuta held out his hand for a handshake to MJF, and then just before he looked like he was about to shake it, Lee Moriarty of the Firm appeared out of nowhere and ambushed Yuta. MJF was seemingly taken aback by the post-match events and even dragged Moriarty away from Yuta. You could hear him yelling, quote, "I didn't tell you to do that, what the hell is that?" Now Stokely Hathaway, of course the manager of the Firm, then handed the Dynamite Diamond Ring to MJF, barking orders at the Salt of the Earth to finish off Yuta, but just before he could do so, William Regal appeared and he had on the infamous brass knucks. It was nice to see the brass knucks back on the signature left hand of William Regal. Regal and MJF then had a face-off before MJF walked away shaking his head. So it would appear this was a bit babyface-ish, wasn't it? This was a bit babyface-ish for MJF, and it makes sense. We have listened to the reaction. I mean, MJF was one of the first people out on last night's show, and the reaction he got was unbelievable. Ever since he come back, his reactions have been huge babyface pops, and ultimately, the crowd decides what you're going to be. And the biggest babyfaces start as heels. They're heels, they're bad guys, because for whatever reason, pro wrestling, we love bad guys. We love to boo people until we decide, actually, we don't want to boo you anymore because you're too cool, because you're too good. We enjoy booing you too much that now we want to cheer you. We enjoy the character too much. And that's what's happening with MJF. And the biggest key here, because clearly he's going to be turned babyface because the crowd just loves him. You know, especially after railing against the Machine and, you know, going against Tony Khan in his promo and all this kind of stuff. And I think the AEW fan base and fans in general probably felt sympathy to MJF. They had been looked over these WWE stars. So he deserved to get the money and he deserved to get this main event spot. And when he wins the AEW World Championship, it's going to be massive. The key thing here for AEW, turning him babyface, is to change nothing. Change nothing about his character. Just let the crowd cheer him now. His promo shouldn't change. His opponents will change because he'll be facing off against heels, but nothing else should change. He should still be a pain in the ass to tag with. He still really shouldn't have friends. He should just be himself. He should still use low blows. He should still use nefarious tactics. He should still use all of it. Nothing should change. That's the biggest problem with pro wrestling. When you've got a heel that gets so popular, they turn into a babyface, and they turn him into a smiling babyface that doesn't cheat to win and believes in integrity. No, nothing should change about MJF apart from his opponents. That should be it. But he could be a massive babyface, clearly, for AEW. Another person seemingly turning babyface is Jay Lethal. After being defeated by Darby Allin last night, Lethal shook hands with Darby Allin whilst his heel crew was on the ramp. Sanjay Dutt and Satnam Singh, they were saying, no, don't do it. But Lethal seemingly shook hands. So I guess Jay Lethal's now babyface, if that means anything to you. Not that he's been doing all of that much in AEW recently too. Finally, some matches have been added to Friday's live Battle of the Belts 4 event. We're going to see Willow Nightingale challenge Jade Cargill for the TBS Championship. Obviously, Pac will be putting on the AEW All-Atlantic Championship on the line against Trent Beretta. In addition to that, we're also going to have a Ring of Honor Tag Team Championship match. Yes, it's going to be FTR putting on their Ring of Honor World Tag Team Championships as well, after they shot an angle earlier on in the show too. So there is going to be, again, it's essentially a 2-hour rampage. They're going to be facing, of course, the Gates of Agony. You can see it on the screen right there. It's going to be a 2-hour rampage, essentially. You're going to have Rampage and you're going to have Battle of the Belts. That's what they're doing there. So there you go, guys. That's the latest AEW news for you. Be sure to smash a like on the like button. Be sure to subscribe, bottom right-hand corner. Let me know your thoughts on today's AEW news stories, this big brawl between Andrade and Sammy Guevara, in the comment section below, and I'll speak for you again very, very soon.
Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.